Hi there, this is Andy. I'm the prop chef here at Two Perspective Studio. We have a new DIY kit for you. It is a sushi kit where you can make pieces of nigiri or regular sushi. Comes with the ramekin to make the sauce, some clays that you can do different things with. You can actually make any type of sushi you want once you learn the technique for doing this. Also comes with a set of chopsticks. Can't have sushi without the chopsticks. All of these things can stay removable on the tray, or you can glue them down. You can make this into a wall hanging. However you want to do it and display it is totally up to you. Comes with everything that you see here on the desk, minus the paintbrushes. So I'm going to set this aside real quick and we can get started. It comes with 3 1-ounce packages of the Model Magic clay, which is what I use for most of my realistic fake food creations that I do. Comes with some acrylic rice and lots of different colors of foam clay. Now, foam clay and Model Magic are not the same thing, and they don't interchange. Do not mix those together. You'll get a clumpy mess that you won't care for. It also comes with the tray to put it on, and like I said, the ramekin. The only things that you'll need to add is a little bit of paint, some sealant if you want to seal your pieces, and a little bit of either clear glue, like a school glue in a clear. You can use silicone glue, that's another choice, or you can use resin, which is what I use to make the little soy sauce ramekin dipping sauce that comes with your sushis. That's totally optional. You don't have to add it if you don't want to. You don't even have to add the little garnishes if you don't want to. I put a little carrot and scallion over here, a little piece of wasabi, and a little bit of ginger. Totally optional. You'll have to, just make it your own. Whatever you like with your sushi. This is just the basic technique. You're going to want to take your Model Magic and open them up. Now, the first thing you need to do with any clay, any air dry clay like this is air dry. The foam clay is as well. You want to condition it a little bit. You'll want to sort of pull it and stretch it until it doesn't break like that. You want it to be very pliable, warm, soft, sort of like a mozzarella cheese when you do your cheese pull. You want it to be more like that rather than breaking. If it's still breaking, you haven't conditioned it enough. So you'll want to get these pieces out and condition your entire pack. If you're not going to use all this right away, you need to put it in some sort of a airtight container, like a resealable zipper baggie, something like that. It will dry out if you leave it on its own. Alright, so we have all 3 ounces. So you'll want to pull that and stretch it until it gets nice and warm and thoroughly conditioned. Sort of really squeeze it, get the air out of it. The more air you have in your clay, the more cracking you can get when it dries, and that's always a disappointment when you spend a lot of time on your pieces and then you go back and they have cracks in them. So you want to make sure that you take enough time and really just twist it, kind of like you're making bread. Really knead it. You can roll it on a hard surface. Model Magic doesn't stick to a whole lot. This is a tile that I have here. You can roll it on anything like that. The foam clay is more likely to stick to different surfaces, so you have to be a little bit more careful with the foam clay. After you get this to a pretty good, nice taffy-like texture, you're ready to begin. So for our plate here, We have 4 pieces of the nigiri style, a couple with tuna, a couple with salmon, just made them different colors. And then we have 4 pieces of the regular sushi wrapped in the little nori. Now, the rice is on top, and you see it looks like a roll with sort of like cucumber, carrot, and maybe some smoked salmon, something like that. So we're going to start with just making all 8 pieces. Actually, I don't think I'll make 8. I'll probably make 3, just to show you the technique. Don't want our video to be too long, right? So for the little round pieces, and you can use a scale for this to make sure that they're all the same size. Sushi is not always the same size, so I don't worry about it too much. I just make a ball that's about maybe like 1.25 inches, something like that. I'll make the ball, and then I'll just take this part of my hand and just give it a little squish. Now I'm using right here, I have rough hands anyway, so I leave a lot of marks in my clay when I do things. I use this part because it's a little smoother. It leaves less fingerprints, handprints, whatever you want to call it. So then I will pick it up and hold it between my hands like this and just very, very gently give it a little roll to make it more like a marshmallow almost. And then I'm going to set it back down, and using that same part, I'm going to mush it out again just to make it more sushi-like. And I'll take my fingers and just sort of dance it around, and it makes it a little more cylindrical, little more squared off, just like a sushi piece. You just want to get it to where it looks like that sushi piece. At that point, you're kind of finished with that. Set it aside. I'm going to make the nigiri piece, which you're going to need a little bit, maybe a little bit more clay. Not a whole lot. Maybe like 1.5 inches. For this one, you're going to make the ball, and then you're going to sort of squeeze it to make it look like a wheel. So you'll have a flat side on the bottom of your wheel, and you squeeze it just a little bit, sort of squeeze it and elongate it a little bit, and slightly pull down as you're doing that, because you're going to make it more like that shape. So press down a little on the top, elongate your side, squeeze it all in to where it's pretty uniform. And then you'll want to flip it on each side, flatten it out, and there you have the shape of a piece of nigiri. About 1 inch wide total, but everything is flat and elongated, nicely put together. So that's how you make your 2 shapes for your sushi. Now, I'm going to take my clay. I don't have a baggie here, but I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to put it in an airtight container or a bag. I'm just going to set it up there for just a minute. So we have these 2 shapes done. Now you can do all your shapes at once, let them dry just a little bit. It's easier to work with when you have a little bit of a crust that's formed. You only need 30-40 minutes like that. You can put them under a fan, just let a fan blow on it for half an hour, and you'll have a sort of a nice sort of a crust that forms over the top. It won't be solid all the way through. That'll take a couple of days, but you'll have enough to work with to where you're not going to smush it as you go along. So the next thing you want to do is make some texture pieces in your sushi piece here. So I have these things, these are called needle tools, Anything sort of with a point on it you can do this with. You can even do it with the end of a scissor if you're careful. Palette knife, some tweezers, a popsicle stick, anything like that will work. What you want to do in the round piece, because you're going to make those little chambers of where you see your carrot or your cucumber or whatever you want it to be in there, you need to make those little triangular chambers. There's usually 3 in the top of a sushi piece. There could be more. However you like your sushi, that's how many chambers you want to make. For me, I'll do just the 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little piece here and I'm going to just press with my needle tool and make those 3 separate chambers. They don't have to be exactly the same size or anything like that. You just need 3 distinct areas that you have poked in the top of your sushi piece, like this. Kind of like making the letter Y or a peace sign if you turn it the other way, something like that, just to identify that there's different areas in there. When you're making these fake foods, all you need to do is give your eye, or give your the person that's looking at it, the eye is sort of trained to see things a certain way when you look at it. So all you're doing is creating the illusion. You're sort of like a magician of fake food when you're doing these things. So you're just creating the illusion that there's something in there. And what you're going to do is you're going to use paint to color those 3 areas, again giving the illusion that there's something in there. You can texture them up if you want to do, like if it was a carrot stick or celery, or not celery, cucumber stick, something like that. You can give it some texture and then paint over it so it looks like there's separate little areas in there. Either way you want to do it is just fine. Then we're going to take a little black paint and we're just going to run a very fine brush in the middle of those chambers to make them look separated. I think I did, yeah. These are even a little bit different colors on there. I did them 2 separate little things, but they're pretty matched. So you're going to take your, I almost got lost there for a minute. You're going to take, I'm just going to set that one aside. Take your black clay. Now these clays are a little bit sticky. These are actually a lot of bit sticky. Wow, that's a lot of sticky. They're usually not that gooey. So we're going to set that, yeah, it usually does not do that. That's unusual. See if I can get that off my hand. You can let the clay air out a little bit and it will get a better texture and it won't come off like that. This must be a sort of an odd bag. But if you just leave it out for a few minutes, it won't be like that. It'll start to dry. Wow. I have never had that happen. So I'm going to leave this bag open. The darker the colors, normally the stickier the clay is. So I can't say that I'm shocked that the black is like that. But I'm going to do, I'll do this piece first while this black is drying out. Let me get this off my hand here. Okay, so for this piece, all you're going to do is create the illusion that this whole thing is a solid piece of rice, which is what the nigiri is. Of course, you know that the base of it is clay and not rice. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this piece and you're going to get some glue or Mod Podge or anything like that that you have. I use a clear glue. You can use clear school glue. Like I said, Mod Podge works just fine. I use a Gorilla Glue for this. And I'm going to put some Gorilla Glue on the side of this piece. And I use a decent amount because these rice granules are an acrylic resin product. Make sure that your kids or your dogs do not eat them thinking that it's real rice. It is not. Make sure that the contents of this kit stay as intended. So you're going to just pour this rice on top of your glue and then just manipulate it to get it all stuck. And you'll have to pick it up grain by grain sometimes and get it all sort of smushed in there so that your clay is covered and you can't really see anything but rice. So it looks like it's a solid piece of rice, like a piece of sushi. And then you're going to repeat that for the opposite side and mainly just the bottoms of the sides. You'll want to just keep the top where it is because you're going to put a piece of fake fish on here. So I'm going to let this one dry for just a second. Put my rice aside. So for this tuna, you're going to take a little bit of your red clay. Get another towel here. You're going to make a nice pinky tuna color. So you're going to use a little bit of the white and a little bit of the red. Mostly the white. Again, make sure that you seal up these bags because this will dry quickly. So I'm going to take a decent amount of white, about as much as I'm going to need for the fish piece, actually, you'll take in the white clay. And then you're just going to take a very, very small, because this clay is concentrated, so you're just going to take a very small, like a fingertip amount, like a pea size of the red. Seal that back up. And you're going to mix this in with the white. And you're going to make a nice light pink color, kind of like a fresh tuna piece. See how that did? Nice light pink. So again, you want to press all the air out, roll it between your hands and press that air out. And then you're going to want to make it into a little rectangle. So you'll have to look at the size of the top of your nigiri piece and just elongate this to where it fits nicely and kind of looks like a chopped piece of fish that you're going to put on top there. So after this has had a few minutes to dry, you can flip it over, give it a little press down on your parchment paper, or if you're using a silicone mat, make sure that you do this on a surface that your sushi is not going to stick to it. So either a piece of parchment or a piece of wax paper or a silicone liner would be a good thing to put it on. So you can put your piece there aside for just a minute and grab our glue. I'm going to put some glue on this side here. A little too much there. I'm just going to smooth this with my finger, making sure it covers the surface. I'm going to get some more of my rice and pour that right on top. Squish it down. And I'm making sure that I don't get rice on the bottom of this piece because I don't want them to sit crooked on my platter, my little tray. I want them to be pretty flush with the surface that I'm going to sit it on. Okay, I've got that covered. I'll let that dry for just a minute. Now we're going to see how our black clay is doing here. Now if you want this to truly look like nori, nori is a little bit green. It's a seaweed, the wrap that goes around the sushi. So you can use a bit of this green clay, and this will help the black not be so sticky also. Maybe use about half of that black clay and mix some of the green clay in it. Ooh, that's still sticky. That is very sticky. Alright, let me get a little more of this green. Take away some of the black. That's better. There we go. So now we have that nice dark greenish black color. So you'll want to sort of roll this around the outside of your sushi piece here. If you have an acrylic roller, you can use that to just elongate that area. Oops. Not sure that that's quite long enough. Just going to stretch it just a little bit more with my fingers to make sure that it'll wrap all the way around. And I'm going to take an X-Acto knife, craft knife, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to cut off, I'm going to just square off the ends of this clay. And I'm not going to worry about the top piece until I get it rolled on there, and then I'm going to see how much trimming it needs. Well, I can already see it's going to need a little, so I'm going to take this off. You don't want it too much wider than your sushi piece. So I'm just going to start at the one side here, and I'm going to place my piece, and then I'm going to start to roll. And it didn't make it all the way around. I'm not doing very well here with showing you how to do this, am I? Let me get a little bit more of this green. It's okay, I'll do a little patchwork. Make sure that you roll it out far enough to where it's going to encompass your whole piece. It'll save you time and aggravation. So don't do what I do. I just need one little piece here. This clay is so tremendously sticky. This is terrible. I had no idea I was going to encounter that. But that's okay, because it's good to show you what happens when you encounter things like this. So I'm just going to continue on with this video and not remake it. And then you'll know how you can fix things when they go wrong. So I'm just going to need a little bit, so I'm going to match this up with where I stopped and go right to the end there, and take my blade and just trim that right off so that it matched. And you can smooth, that's one very nice thing about these foam clays, is that you can smooth them together pretty easily and get rid of any seams, lumps, bumps, anything like that. So there we have that. So for our paint colors here, I have this is called Brilliant Yellow Green. It's by Liquitex. Sort of a cucumbery color, I think. I'm going to take a very small paintbrush. This is a very small, round, fine tip little paintbrush here. And I'm just going to put a little bit on there, and I'm going to go around in one area, and I'm going to put some of this paint on very lightly. And I'm going to stick it down in our grooves here to make it look like there's some cucumber in there. And that's all you have to do for that. Now I have some water over here. I'm just going to rinse off my brush. I'm going to dry it off on the paper towel. My next color is going to be a carrot color. This is an acrylic paint that's just orange. It's a little bit dark for a carrot color. You can use a craft paint that might be a little bit lighter. Choose your colors according to what you want to stuff your sushi with. Craft paint comes in a huge array of colors, so there's really no limit to what you could paint this and make it look like, honestly. So I put some orange in the next little cavity, and then the last one I'm going to put some red. I cleaned my brush in between each application and dried it off on a paper towel. I'm going to take some of this red so that it just looks like a nice, maybe a salmon color. I'm going to put some red over here, getting down in those grooves. Now we have 3 colors in there. So you want to use a black paint, and you should probably let your paints dry before you do this. But you're going to want to use a black paint to put just a little line. Just run your brush ever so lightly in between those grooves to create the effect that you have the nori wrapped around this area. And I go all around the outside like that. And like I said, if you want to make little textures in here, you can certainly do that with the needle tool. If you wanted to make it look like there was multiple cucumbers, just take the needle tool and sort of poke it a little bit. Same thing with the carrot area with the orange. You can just do some dots on there and it makes it look a little more textured. Sushi is a pretty interesting thing to do fake because you can do it a lot of different ways. So for the illusion on this one, after this paint is dry, you're going to take some more glue, and all you're going to do is put a little bit of glue or Mod Podge, whatever you're using, right around this top area, because that's all that's going to show with this particular piece. Now, if you were doing rice on the outside with the nori wrap on the inside, you would do this a little differently, and you can cover the whole outside of the piece with the rice. But that's not the illusion that I'm giving here. I'm giving more of the, it's a wrapped sushi with stuff in the middle. So all you're going to see is rice on the top. So you're just going to take a little bit of this rice and place it all around that white ring on the top of this. And it'll give the illusion that the whole thing is rice. And you're just going to have to do this part grain by grain and get them right up next to each other. Like I said, after this paint dries, you're going to do this. Don't do it while it's wet like I am, because you can get paint on your rice, and you definitely don't want that. I'm being pretty careful not to do that, but it's really best to let your piece dry. And you can do this with a tweezer. You may be able to even pick up this rice with a wax pencil. I'm not sure about that. Like if you were doing rhinestone work and you use those wax pencils to pick up your fine items, you might be able to pick this up with that. I've not tried that, so I can't say whether it works or not, but you could try. It might be a little easier if that does work. And just make sure that you cover all the slick white clay part on here, and you just leave the rice. And sort of pack it down just a little bit, and then you have the illusion of a piece of rice. So this one's been drying for a couple of minutes. The reason that I leave it is to let that glue set up just a little bit so that the rice pieces, because they're heavy, you don't want them sliding down on the, the sides after you put it up there. You want to let it just shore up for a couple of minutes and then you can move on. Or you can let it dry completely, which is probably your better bet. For demonstration purposes, this is what we're doing. So I have a little glue that came down on the one side. I'm going to have to put a little bit of glue on the other side over here. Just a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to keep the top open for that piece of fish. I'm going to slide that glue down here just a little. Just make sure that you get enough rice on there to where you can't see the clay underneath the piece of fish, if that makes sense. And if you have trouble with the rice sliding down on the sides, just wait for your glue to get a little tack to it. Just a couple of minutes. The stuff dries pretty quick. If you're using craft glue, it'll dry even quicker than the Gorilla Glue that I'm using. Mod Podge, you may need to hit it with a hair dryer to get it to tack up quicker. But this kit is fairly simple to use. And like I said, once you learn the basic technique, you can do any sort of sushi that you want. Fairly easily. Alright, I think I have enough rice on there. Now I'm going to take, I have glue already on the top. I'm going to take that piece and just form it a little bit, curve it a little bit to the sides, and I'm going to stick it right on the top and give it a little press to make sure it adheres. Now if your rice comes off the very bottom, leave your piece sit stationary and don't lift it. Or if you do lift it, put your pieces back on and leave it where it is until it's dry, and then they'll be sure to stick on there. Okay, so that's basically how you do the sushi part of this project. Pretty easy, didn't take much time at all. To do your scallions, you can take a little more of this green clay and a little pinch of the black, not a whole lot because this black goes a long way. You just want to put just a little bit in there, just to darken this green enough to look like a scallion green color. And then you just want to roll it and sort of work that color in there until it gets just a little bit darker. You can also paint over this clay with a darker color after it's dry. Even though it's already colored, you can color over it with paint. So you'll want to roll it into a ball. Make sure you press out the air, very important. And then you can just use the palms of your hands, or you can use your surface, whichever, and roll this into a little worm. You'll want to use the flat part and not your fingertips to make your worm longer and skinnier, like a scallion. You may need to snip it in half and just roll it. I'm going to pull this up and get it back on my tile. I'm going to snip it again just to make a smaller piece. The scallions typically aren't too long, but they are, you'll want to do each edge and make them pointy and skinnier. And then you can sort of make it whatever length you feel like is a good length. It's okay if it's not extraordinarily straight. Crooked is fine too. And you just roll them into long, skinny little pieces, however long you want them. They're usually fairly uniform when they come as the little pieces on the side of a sushi container. So as long as you don't make them too awful long and keep them fairly uniform, I think you're just fine. Or if you don't want any garnish on it, that's fine too. So I'll put that back in here. For the carrot, it's the same principle, only you're going to square off your pieces just a little bit. If I can get this open. You want to take a small amount. It doesn't take much to make these. I'm just going to try and make one or two. So you want to take a very small amount of clay, like not much bigger than a pea size, and just roll it out to whatever size you want. If you want to make it a little lighter in color, you can add a little white to it. And then you just want to sort of tap it and square it off just a little bit to make it look like a julienne carrot. But that's kind of all you're going for your garnish. And you can let those dry, and you can leave them dry on the plate, or you can, you know, whatever you want to do with them. You can glue all of this down and make a really neat wall hanging out of the whole tray. To make the ginger, you're going to want to take some white, and then you're going to take a very, very small amount of the yellow. Very, very small. Ginger is pretty translucent, and it's just barely yellowed. Barely. So you want to take just a little bit. I just sort of smudged a very tiny little piece on there. And you want to roll this together until it turns that very pale gingery color. Make sure you get it all mixed in. So to make the ginger pieces, they're usually very flat. I'll just take a piece of this wad here, and I run my finger until it's very, very very, very thin, almost see-through. And then I'll just pull it back up, because the ginger pieces are they're not uniform ever. They're, you know, all different. They're sliced very, very thin. So after I know you can't see it very well on my tile surface because they're both very, I just sort of smush it out to where it's very, very skinny. And then I'll sort of put the one with the other, and I'll curl up some of the pieces, because ginger's usually kind of curled up, sort of like this. You didn't see that. So I'll just continue to manipulate those pieces and then pull them up off my desk, and they kind of curl, and then I'll sort of stick it with the other ones, and I'll just make a little mass of what looks like little ginger pieces, and I'll put that on the tray. For the other piece of sushi that has the salmon color on it, what you're going to want to do is take a little bit of red. I still have a little white, but I'm probably going to need some more. Just a little bit of the red, some white, and some of this orange. And you can actually add a little bit of yellow in with it as well, and it'll make it more of that corally color. Let's see what I have here. You can sort of mess around with these clays in little pieces to make just the color you're looking for. And if you look at a color wheel or ask an AI robot different colors to mix together in which proportions to make what you're going for, the robots can help you understand color mixing a little bit better. So a little red, a little yellow, and a little white makes this nice salmon-y coral color that you can put on that piece to make it look like that. Now these pieces have been glossed and some little paint streaks have been added to the top. I'm going to put this one aside here. So typically after I have done these, I will take a very thin, again, a very thin little paintbrush, and I'll take a little bit of an off-white paint, any, like an antique white craft paint or anything like that. This one is called Milky White. It's just an off-white paint. I just take a very small amount, and then I'll rub most of it off on a towel or whatever, just leaving a little bit of dry. It's called dry brushing. My paint is not watered down, but I will just sort of flick like this with my brush over the top in sort of a diagonal in a couple of little areas across the fish, the fake fish. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'm sure you can see it on here, and I know you can see it on this one. But I just flicked a couple of little marks across the top. You can make them as dark or as light as you think. If you look at some pictures of sushi, it'll give you an idea of different colorations, different shading, things that you can do to make it look more realistic. So after this piece is dry, I'll take something like a form of acrylic sealer. I usually use spray sealer. You don't have to use a spray sealer. They do come in liquid form. This is a gloss varnish by Liquitex. It's totally fine to use. This is the Mod Podge clear acrylic sealer. There's Krylon brands, lots of different brands of acrylic sealers. So whatever one is your choice to use is what you should use. If you have something already, by all means use it. Don't buy anything special for it. Sealer is sealer. If you don't want it as shiny, you can use a satin finish or a semi-gloss finish. I like the shine, especially with the sushi, because I feel like it always looks wet when you get it. And that calls for a gloss or even an extra gloss, you know, whatever one you like. For the dipping sauce, which is the last piece of this. Oh, I didn't show you the wasabi. For the wasabi, I use a little paint and some white clay. I just take a very small piece, and they have some different craft paints. This one is a forest moss by Folk Art. If you just add a couple of drops of this to your clay, it will turn it that sort of wasabi color. Should have had a glove on for this. And just manipulate that paint right into the clay. And then I just fold it into a little ball. I use my fingertips to make a few marks in the top so that it looks like somebody just plopped down a piece of wasabi on there. And then you have, when it dries, you have a nice piece of little wasabi horseradish there. I'm going to clean my fingertips off. For the dipping sauce on here, you can use a variety of materials. There is clear glue, which is fine to use. It's going to take a few days to dry solid. All you would do is add a little bit of alcohol ink in with it in the color of just any kind of brown, or a reddish brown works just fine for this. These are 1.5 ounce ramekins. If you make 1 ounce, it fills it almost, I mean, this is a little more than an ounce. It's almost to the top. I would recommend no more than 1 ounce of whatever you're making to put in your ramekin. If you're using glue, it'll probably dry 4 or 5 days. I'd say it would be solid. If you use a silicone glue like this one, again, probably about 3 days to dry completely solid. And if you use a resin, it'll be dry overnight. I typically use resin for this. 2-part epoxy resin works fine. I just put a little brown alcohol ink. You can find alcohol inks in the craft stores, or on Amazon. Lots of different places sell alcohol inks. You just need something that's a basic brown, or a brownish red is totally fine. Again, you're just giving the illusion that there's some sort of sauce in here. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. Another option for this is making a false bottom and just using some paint. You can cut a piece of cardboard to the square, the circle about halfway up where you want that to stop, and you can use a little hot glue bead to get your cardboard piece to stay in there. Once it's dry, you can use a little bit of glue and a little bit of paint, or a little glue and a little alcohol ink, just to brush over the top of your cardboard, and it'll again give the illusion that there's a full cup of stuff here. If you need any helpful hints on that, or further information, you can message me. It's pretty easy to do. Like I said, I usually just fill them with resin and that's it. But there's lots of other ways to do little false sauces without having to use resin if you don't like resin, and that's totally fine. So if you have purchased this kit, I hope that you have great success with it. Like I said, if you need any help, you can always message me at on my Facebook page. You can leave a comment here in the YouTube comments section on the video. If you need any help, I will try and answer that. Or my email is listed on there also. If you have more technical questions, you can always send me an email. I'm happy to help. So that's about as easy as it gets to make some fake sushi. I hope that you give it a try and have fun with it. Like I said, if you need me for anything, I am here. So I'm trying to keep this video short, and I will see you next time with the next kit video. This is Andy, the Prop Chef, signing off. Bye.